Yeah, I know. Best laid plans. What did you go Monday for me? What did you do Monday for me?
Oh, no, that was Friday.
I mean Friday.
Yeah, the
Good morning, everybody. We will call the May 24th, 2021 special work session to order. For me, this is kind of a bittersweet process because we are looking for a new city manager, and Mr. Horn, having been here as city manager for 20 years plus, that's the bitter part. And yet it's also exciting as we go through the process. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Art Davis with Baker Tilly, who is our consultant for recruitment. Mr. Davis, good morning.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Is it on? Well, my name's Art Davis. We've all talked extensively on the phone, and really appreciate the opportunity to be here in person. It's good to shake hands and smile and see everybody in person. You have before you 9 candidates that we have put together, cover letter, resume, a pretty detailed list of questions for them to respond to. Some more lengthy responses than others. I'm sorry for some of the length of their writing, and also a due diligence memo to kind of get them on the record of talking about some of their issues and their past, and I think it's a solid group of candidates. You've got some Florida candidates. You've got some people that are managers of coastlines. You've got people that have military backgrounds. So I think it's a wide assortment of candidates, and we did have quite a few that decided at the last minute not to put in, and part of it, they just, and the challenges, they didn't want their entire community where they're working having all that information or response to questions out in the public that they were seeking other employment, and so that's just the way it goes in Florida, and you guys know the challenges there. So But overall, I think highly experienced group of candidates, and some councils, you want to talk about every single one of the semifinalists. Some, I think, especially in a public setting like this, it's if there's candidates that there may not be any interest in, then why not get some consensus on those that there is some interest in to talk about and focus on, and then we don't have to spend a lot of time talking about or me presenting anything about a person's background that you really have no interest in. And so, I don't know, Mayor, how you would want to do that, if maybe
That was going to be
identifying
one of my questions for you. Would we go through the 9 that we have left, or find consensus on ones that we want to strike? I think we're trying to get down to a minimum or a maximum of 5.
Right.
But I also don't, if we think there's only 4 legitimate finalists, I'm fine to get to that too.
Differentiation between, if there's some 3 or 4 that have really, really strong qualifications, and that 4th or 5th that doesn't, then, that's probably where your most discussion is going to occur, if you want to spend the extra time on those days of interviews on that additional candidate or candidates. Sometimes you find some superstars out of that group, but sometimes your strong candidates are so strong, there's not a need to do that. So, any preferences, Chair of the Board?
Well, I'd rather, if we do have some people that I think everybody feels comfortable striking, then I don't think there's any need to waste the time on that. I don't know that we'll get consensus on that, but why don't we just, is there anybody who just clearly they took someone off their list? Mr. Bunker.
I was troubled by David Johnston. Anytime somebody calls themselves a visionary, I get a little worried. And he looked good on paper. He called himself a humble visionary. But I did a Google search on him, and I saw he was asked to leave from 3 different jobs. And the last city, the council members, many of them were slumlords. You would think that there would be something that would be addressed. On paper, he looked good until I looked a little deeper. He also acknowledges that he's short-tempered and terse. Oh, and he couldn't find any place to live here in Clearwater on a budget that's 10 times what I'm getting paid. I think I'd be able to find a place to live.
He's one that I struck, so.
Me too.
Ditto. He was definitely not one of my top ones, that's for sure.
Okay.
I agree.
Anyone else?
Consensus on that.
I did. I struck. I just wanted to say before, we start commenting about people, this isn't, like the mayor said, it's bittersweet to look through these and decide on a new city manager, but it is such a crucial role in our city, so, I want to do my best to get it right. But on the other hand, people have spent 11, 12 pages pouring out, their heart and their soul and their vision, and we're here critiquing it, and I don't want to be, I want to be respectful of them and not nitpick things. But I would say with Jill Goldsmith, unfortunately, she's one of only 2 women that made the cut of 10, but she, I think the tiny town of 6,000 full-time residents, and then up to 30,000 in season near Cape Cod is just too much of a jump for our city and the demands that we have.
I think the size of her city was an issue for me. The no masters was an issue for me. I like some of her responses. I think she sounds very intelligent. I mean, I do, it is tough to judge people on paper. I much prefer sitting down with somebody and having a discussion, not only with all of us, but also one-on-one, And so I hate to strike people, based upon answers on paper. But I don't know that the jump is just, I can't disagree with you on that.
If I spoke with her several times at length, and she is, the complexities that she's dealing with, I know it's a small town, but sometimes you find the complexities, she's dealing with many, not the exact same, but many of the similar issues of being a shoreline community. She's dealing with a lot of the same government agencies. She's really masterful at collaboration with other communities and other agencies and working together to address issues. Sometimes the complexities of what you're dealing with, even if it's a smaller organization, you see people shine, and it doesn't mean, it means they've been content and challenged. It doesn't mean they can't handle the larger communities. I've always been of the thought, if you manage well typically you have the same number of direct reports, whether you're a town of 10 or 20,000 as you do if you're a town of 100,000. And it's the total number of employees and maybe labor groups that you're dealing with. But she deals with a truly activist population when she's meeting with these groups of committees, and I think she mentioned in there, 30-some committees that she works with in the community, and so it's a very participatory government style, and she's very collaborative. And quite honestly, to me, that's extremely challenging, and sometimes challenging to get department directors, recruited to a smaller community like that and keeping them. And although I think they're well funded as a community, but I wouldn't discount her only because of the size. If you found some things in her writing that are responses that were strong, then to me there deserves some merit also.
What about, it's a pretty homogeneous, very wealthy community, compared to ours. Collaborating with activists who are there doing the work and have the time and energy to put into making change in your community is one thing, versus a community that's, we've got great wealth disparity, and the people that should be speaking up don't necessarily speak up enough.
Councilmember Bunker?
I really liked her answers, and I agree with you that that was troubling seeing, the small community. But then I looked at some of the other resumes, and there were people now leading bigger communities who made that same type of jump. I kind of like to meet her and talk with her, because I think she has potential.
Councilmember Albritton?
Yeah, she, going through all the different things that she went through, I kind of agree with you that it seems like she handled some of the problems very well. She was one of the ones that I liked. I did think about the small city, but I can imagine the position she's in with trying to get the different. I know it's a very wealthy community, but some of the responses on the points of trying to get things resolved in there, I thought was very good. I don't know. I don't think I would strike her out, at least for now. I think there was some other ones that were better, but I don't think I would disregard her at this point.
Vice Mayor?
I would agree with what Mr. Albritton said. I don't have her at the top of my list, but I have a few of the candidates that I think came in a little lower. she is from a smaller town, but she also deals very heavily with tourism out in Cape Cod. So, yeah, I didn't have her scored as low as a couple of other people. So I'm not sure I would just unilaterally eliminate her from consideration at this point.
Okay, we'll come back to her. Anybody else that anyone feels comfortable striking, Mr.
Well,
Albritton?
Yeah, the other woman, Jane Shang, reading through what she submitted and also doing some research online, I'm fairly uncomfortable with just the positions she was in. She's not a city manager now. She
No.
hadn't been one for over a year. And there was a couple of things that, well, she had to resign as city manager because of some issues, and then there was a couple of, they called her an embattled city manager, so, and right off that, to me, if I'm looking for the best for Clearwater, I don't know, she kind of drops off my list at that point.
Well, the reading online certainly was colorful there.
Yeah.
Now, that doesn't mean that her counsel isn't crazy, too. So, and I don't know that. I couldn't decipher that from looking. I mean, both our city attorney and city manager went through the resumes, I know, as well. Do you have any insights?
The only thing that I would share is that Deltona has a history of challenges for its managers, because I've known most of them. And
Has that been a long list?
no, it's.
I mean, do they have turnover?
Yes,
Yeah, it's a fairly new community, isn't it? I mean, they got chartered, not.
yes, and when the tenor of the conversation really dealt with just, managers challenged by their relationships with council members. I mean, that's just, so, that's all I can say.
Do you have any
I
insight?
don't know, Art may have more insight.
It's,
I mean, you put her into your semifinalists knowing,
she was successful getting a lot of things done, and was, had a very high position of responsibility at the city of El Paso for a number of years as an assistant city manager. And, she's extremely smart, competent, and she's a doer, and she will get things done. Now, I think there's been issues. It's hard. I haven't gotten into any deep background checks or searches, but from what the media says, she has on occasion is pretty abrupt and forthright, and she was in her interviews online. She was that way.
I think she blamed the media in some of the
Yeah,
accounts.
and there may be some legitimacy to that. Like Bill, I've heard they've had some extended challenges with governing in that city, and so she's highly experienced in a Florida community, and was successful for a period of time.
Councilmember Bunker?
I was very impressed with her on paper when I first read her accounts, but then when she said that she resigned over differences with the new mayor, that's when I started the Google searching. And I thought the stories there were very troubling, because apparently over the course of her tenure, many department heads resigned and complained about communication problems with her, and the newspaper reports cited a toxic atmosphere. So, yeah, I don't know. I would say no, but, maybe.
I'm not sure if I may be confused, but I thought actually Ms. Shang had, actually had a very good relationship with her mayor. It was a couple of other of her council
And
that
a
she had a
citizen
major problem
group, I
with.
believe, too.
Big problem with, or they had a big problem with her. My understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, they had they have city hall watchdogs like we do, and one of them made a big issue out of it. And her main thing was, her voter registration when she came into Deltona, and then, I mean, I can understand with the responsibilities of that job, you kind of forget about getting something such as that in your personal life taken care of when you're so focused on what your job responsibilities are. But then that got elevated to 6 felonies, allegedly 6 felonies and some other things and whatnot. So, I mean, that just, created a very hard, very difficult working environment for her. But the YouTube video I saw, the other things, it was a couple council members, but it just mushroomed to a point that she basically said, for the good of the city, I probably need to move on. And so, I think, like what was pointed out, I think she did some really good things in her previous employment in El Paso. And El Paso can be a very difficult town to work in too, with all of its geographic
The border issues.
and everything else. So, not to change the subject, because I don't know that, I would not vote to take her off the list just yet. I mean, I'll put 2 names out there that probably came in lower, and it pains me to say it about one of them, because I know he's the one person I know personally on the list, Robin Gomez. I think Robin's a great guy. I just don't think he's ready to be city manager of Clearwater. I know what the responsibilities are, and I know what the job is, and what we are. I don't think he's quite ready for a job of this magnitude. In the future, he may very well be, but I think today, I would not move on him, or Mr. Walker from Chamblee, Georgia. I was not overly moved by him either. So those would be my 2 strikes, other than, I mean, Mr. Johnson was also one of my lower ranked candidates. So put that out there for you.
Okay. So where are we on Miss Shang? You haven't weighed in on that one,
No, I haven't,
Councilmember
as
Beckman.
our second female for, advocating for some kind of diversity. The one thing that I found interesting was the voter registration thing, where she registered at City Hall first or something because she didn't have a residence. That's understandable. I don't think that's a huge deal. But the thing that I found more troubling is apparently she issued a trespass kind of warrant or whatever for a resident who asked questions about food inspection at the center, that's some city-run thing, and that just seemed like an abuse of power to do that. And she didn't disclose it in the section that said, if we Google you up, what might we find? To me, that's a lot more troubling than, I didn't file my registration address on time, or as my residence changed. So I think that's, I think it's impressive. She's got a legal degree, and, she has managed a very large city, but there are some red flags there.
Any other comments, Councilmember Bunker, on?
No, I've made my points on it.
Okay. How about Mr. Walker that the vice mayor raised? I agree with you. He's one of the other ones I'd struck. just because I think it's too soon and coming
think so.
from too small a community. I think he's got real potential,
Yeah.
and I kind of feel the same way about Mr. Gomez, even though I know him well and respect him. I think he was a great employee here. I just don't know that he's ready to make that leap. It is an enormous, and I know everything's scalable, but what are everyone's thoughts on those two folks?
I agree. I didn't know Mr. Gomez, but I kind of came to the same conclusion. Probably not the right time.
And Mr. Walker?
Same.
Okay.
I was looking for the ICMA credentials, and he was one of them that did not have it.
I'm okay with that as well, Mr. Gomez as well as Mr. Walker. With size of cities and experience with our size of city and budgets.
I like John Walker with his journalism degree. I like the mid-city stroll that he does there. And I don't see any scandals, but, I'm willing to go along with you and say, he was one of those that I thought, I really like, but there's more I like more. And I'll agree with Robin Gomez, too.
All right, so I'm taking both of them out. How about Gary Palmer?
I don't know if y'all noticed, if he resigned
Yes.
a couple
Yes.
weeks ago, effective June 1st, from his position, so.
Right.
And in one of his statements, he says he does not have the normal encumbrance. I don't know what that, if there's other ones other than not having a job right now, Mr. Davis.
Is that,
He said, I
Is
am
he-
unencumbered by the typical norms at this point in my life.
I mean, is he
Does
single?
that
Is
just mean he doesn't have a job, or there's no
He
kids?
has
or
no wife and family? I don't know.
I don't know what that means.
Okay. In this instance, I emailed his mayor. She hasn't gotten back to me to try to find out some more information. I mean, on paper, I think he's impressive. Continued to do, a lot of additional courses at very prestigious institutions, and I like somebody that continues to grow. He also is very candid in some of his responses.
Yeah.
He's got a diversity of experience, not just government, as far as his military experience,
Yeah.
which can bring something to it.
So the closure thing was very interesting to me. That whatever was discussed in Georgia, they don't have the sunshine. They can go behind doors and discuss something that nobody can get to, so.
I like him. He wasn't at the top of my list, but I certainly liked his experience, his marine background, and seemed like a nice guy. He supports new tech and believes in a smart city. There's no climate change background, but also no scandal, so I'm not opposed to him.
We're going through these and we're being critical of these people. Because that's our job to do that. But, they made the top 9
Yeah.
list.
Yeah.
They're all good people, and I almost want to apologize for what we're saying, but, we have due diligence is part of our job, and to come up with the best for Clearwater. we have to look for those little inconsistencies or things that make us a little uncomfortable. But I don't want,
Well,
You
we
know-
have to narrow the field.
we have to. I mean,
So-
that's how we have to do it.
One of my written comments was, seems like a nice guy.
Yeah,
All right, so let me attack this from a different direction. Who were the people on the list that you absolutely wanted in your top 5? Councilmember
Well,
Hamlin.
I'll give you three. I
Okay.
think the three to me that stood out the most were Mr. Cernak, Mr. Gefkin, and Mr. Woods.
that's what I had.
Those three were those are my top three. If you want 5, I can come up with 2 more. But those would be my top 3.
Well, I have Michael Cernich and Kevin Woods. And I did have Robin Gomez, so I would probably switch out Jill Goldsmith.
You'd make her in your top 3,
Yeah, I'd like to give her a chance.
okay? Councilmember Beckman?
I had the same top 3 as Councilmember Vice Mayor Hamilton.
Okay. Councilmember Albritton?
Yeah, I said, those are the top 3 I had.
You had the same, okay.
Yeah.
Those were my top 3 as well.
Say those again?
Well, look at that.
So Chernick, Wood, and Keffin. Kefkin. Reading helps. It's a lost art. So I think the question then is, who do we want to add for the
Is
4
it,
and
do you
5
think,
spots?
is it necessary, if we have almost basically a consensus of the top 3, with one exception of Ms. Goldsmith, do we need to go to 5? Do we, I mean, there's an expense involved in this, because if we're gonna bring them all in for interviews, we gotta fly them in, we gotta put them up, we gotta go through the process. And if we have pretty much a consensus of 3, I mean, I'd be comfortable doing just those 3, or if you'd like to add Ms. Goldsmith so that we have a female candidate, I'm okay there too, but I personally don't think we need to go to 5 with what I've been hearing.
Yeah, I'm not one for checking boxes, but at the same time, in this process, I think we are limiting this to a one-dimensional reading of their resumes and their answers to questions. And I think we owe the process 5 candidates, frankly. And the amount of money that's going to be spent, while I agree we're spending money, is a rounding error in our budget. And this is a decision that is going to impact us, hopefully, for quite a while. I don't know if they'll ever break your record, Mr. Horn. I tend to think that one may be in the books for a very, very long time. But that being said, I hope it's somebody that we're going to have here for 5, 6, 10 years. And, I'm a little reluctant just to narrow it to 3. But that's just my opinion. Councilmember Beckman.
I would say, I would advocate for Jill Goldsmith, to be interviewed, not based on the fact that she's a female, but based on what Mr. Davis has illuminated for us. And I would ask you, so did you have conversations with all 9 of these? So
Yeah,
what can you?
Jill was very impressive.
Okay.
And, well, and we didn't talk about it in our conversations, but I don't think I've ever heard anybody bring up the issue of the roadhouse management theory.
Yeah.
That's right.
Roadhouse.
Bill, have you ever heard that before?
Yeah.
I've never.
That's one I could have probably done without.
I thought it was humorous, and but I found her very compelling and smart, and
And worth
you
a
know,
meet.
she has had good relations everywhere she's been, both externally and internally, and she's a good manager. Would she be a good fit here? I don't know.
And then when talking about Jan Shang and, part of the comments I made, and first of all, her education is impressive. And I like, her blunt to the point writing style here in articulating what she's done. It's a little interesting about this quietly negotiating Amazon. It's like, what does that mean as far as residents? And, can you illuminate on that at all?
I did.
So I don't know what quiet negotiation means when you're bringing Amazon to your community.
You're talking about Jane?
Yeah.
Well, especially, in Florida, it's public information. And,
But I mean, if she's blunt, if she, as you said, you have a feeling that she gets things done, I don't know if a real blunt style, I just don't know. I mean, I can take a blunt style, but I don't know. But again, it's that issue with overstepping her bounds with a resident who asked questions, called some things out, there were some violations, and then kind of retribution to that residence, not that, to me, that's a red flag. But I would advocate to hear from Jill, her quirky answer about Roadhouse and those life lessons. A sense of humor is always good.
Well, I think on the Amazon front, that's probably what Amazon wanted.
oh, yeah.
Most companies, when they're looking, they want to keep things as quiet as possible because they are going to not pick many communities. That was an extremely competitive thing that occurred with Amazon around the country. It didn't stay very private very long because of the level of incentives. I don't think it was for their actual, East Coast headquarters. But Ms. Sakin, do you have anything to add on some of those questions or comments?
No, sir, I
No.
don't.
Councilmember Albritton, you had something to add?
Well, I wanted to, I think we have four. I mean, if we have the three that we kind of all, and then we include
Ms. Goldsmith?
Goldsmith, Jill in that, I'd like to take another look at Johnson.
The three resignations.
And here's some of the things that I thought, going through the resumes, that caught my attention with him. In Covington, he said he changed the zoning code to form-based, which we have here, and I thought that was interesting. He also plans to install the modern SCADA system to monitor the water and the sanitary system. Seems like he's up with all the things that we have talked about. Says he encourages management team to use his or her talents and abilities to develop programs. So sounds like he tries to work and get the different departments to lead the different departments instead of managing. One thing that Art, that I wanted to ask you about, it says here under what methods, strategies, and approaches have you used? Would you ensure open, candid, accurate, essential two-way communication with elected officials such as the mayor and council members? He says here that he relies on to develop collective consensus on or about the direction of staff on the issues facing the city, and good relationship with the council chair as elected leader of the council for clarification purposes. Too, I hope from this relationship the council chair and I share concerns from the council and can work together to address them before they become a thorn in the side. I don't know if that would be something he could do in Florida. with Sunshine. To me, you know, he could get together with each one of us, but to get with, I don't know, it sounded like can you give me some direction on that? Maybe I'm reading
I don't
into it
believe he
wrong.
had any experience in Florida. I'm going off memory here. Had he been in Florida before?
No.
I don't think so. So, you know, not legally, I don't know the law specifically like your city attorney would, but he would need to meet with you all individually, I think.
Yeah, and you know, that's one of the things I looked at each one of these candidates, how they work with council, because that's, you know, I mean, Bill, we have weekly meetings with Bill and Pam both, and then we rely on Bill to build consensus if he feels like he can, because most people don't understand that we cannot talk together you know, any of the council or the mayor or anybody on city business
Do it in a public meeting.
unless it's sitting here.
Yeah.
So,
But I think, I wouldn't read too much into that. He was probably just grasping for,
well, and I'm not criticizing, I'm just saying that was one of the things I thought maybe, other than that, and his, you know, he's self-professed that he, not that has a temper, but that
He's
that sometimes.
impatient.
Terse.
Yeah,
Terse.
yeah, very, and that was the only thing that I really found concerning. Everything else looked, to me, I mean, I thought he had a very good resume.
I've never liked that answer, though. You know, what's your weakness? I'm so impatient to get things done.
Well, I'm a perfectionist.
You know,
It's a tough one. He's also, you know, has, again, to pick apart or whatever, I mean, zero experience with climate change or any initiatives in that realm. And, you know, even to do some research and talk about the significant challenges we face here as a coastal city and the challenges we face with state regulations on what we can do. And, you know, I think, you know, that's certainly important to me.
I'm still comfortable leaving him out. Their city's, you know, 20% of the workforce that we have. Budget almost the same. If there was anybody else I'd add in, it would be Gary Palmer.
I did a Gary before.
From Roswell.
Yeah,
So,
we
Boyd, are you gonna be okay?
to
'Cause
find
you
out what, you know, why he
No,
actually
I
left.
can, no,
Graduated from the University of
I can
Georgia.
deal with the Georgia guy. Don't worry about that.
But that's, I don't think we have to feel compelled to get to 5. That's just the
No.
person I would add.
Okay, I thought you were trying to get to 5.
I like.
I have 4 solid, so.
So are we comfortable with that? And do you
So
want
we're
to,
including
Ms.
the
Goldsmith?
visionary?
Which one's the visionary?
I'm sorry.
Right now, I have Chernick, Woods, Kefkin, and Goldsmith.
Okay, so Johnston isn't
And Palmer, you have,
in there. Okay.
so it's whether or not to add Palmer with, I'm okay with those 4, you just,
Well, Palmer would be 5, but I think I'm hearing that he's kind of been eliminated, so.
Well, David Johnston was asked to leave 3 different jobs. And I have a feeling short-tempered and terse is not telling the full story.
I had him struck from the get-go, so. Do you all have anything to add? I mean, I value your opinion, Mr. Horn and Ms. Aiken.
Nope.
You think we're making a mistake leaving one of these folks out?
Well, I mean, I think it was always a focus on how many you all felt comfortable with. So you've got 3.
I don't think
Well, you
there's
got
a right
4.
number. We have
If
4.
you really want to, if it just kind of eliminates any question about it, and you want to get to 5, then, you know, you can add a 5th one, and then you're done. I mean, other than that,
You built-
it's really what your comfort level.
you built your schedule around 5 for the.
I know we did.
Yeah.
So,
but we also added
a long
15
day.
minutes in the individuals,
Yeah.
so that can be altered. I want a minimum of an hour. I do also want to put one other thing on the record. Michael Chernick was in town this weekend, and he attended the wine walk on Cleveland Street. I did meet him. We did not talk at all, other than an introduction. And I believe he met
And I didn't
Councilmember
recognize
Albrecht
him.
either.
I
That's
met him,
not-
but I
He
just
told
said,
me,
hello.
he told me he was coming up to scout
But
everything out.
we both talked for literally about 60 seconds and just an introduction, but there was no discussion of the job or anything else, because we both said we've got a process and we're not going to impact that process. I have to admit, I was impressed he was in town to at least see Clearwater, and he brought his wife and his 2 kids. So,
I had him at the top of my list before hearing anything else about him. I didn't know he was in town, but he did say that he reached out to a lot of locals in his cover letter, and I thought that was good. And I did hear, just to be open about it, I did get a call from Samuel Hutkin, who was very impressed with him. That didn't weight my decision because I really already liked him a lot.
well, he's called a lot of people.
I assumed if he was calling me, he's calling you all.
I'm not talking about me, but I know about other community leaders that just said, called and said, well, this gentleman reached out, and I said, well, I've been hearing he has, so. But I just want to disclose that I did meet him this weekend on the street.
Yeah, he didn't tell me that. He just told me that he had come into town and been reaching out to people he knew in town just to see what they thought of Clearwater.
Councilmember Beckman?
Can you comment on the number of applications you received and the diversity that's represented in those applications? Is that the norm? Are you surprised? Can you just give me an overall commentary about the beginnings of our, what we see in this binder and the 91 that applied, as well as the fact that we don't have any internal candidates?
You had 92 apply.
A little closer to the microphone.
I'm sorry, 92 apply. And I don't know the exact breakdown on the diversity, but you had a pretty diverse candidate pool. We had some extremely diverse, high targeted prospects that I was working with that were of both ethnic and gender diversity, and they just decided for personal reasons and family reasons that they weren't going to pursue the job. And so at the last minute, they withdrew, or they didn't actually submit. And and I can get a breakdown of applicants for you.
I think we had like 13 females, 91, 92, whatever,
Yeah.
applicants.
What is the percentage of men versus women as city managers? Do you know that?
It's the vast majority are male, but I think there's a rising number of female city managers each and every year. And
But I mean, if the pool is, in my industry, we have a huge problem with diversity. It's a male-dominated industry. It always has been. And it's primarily white men. And the companies are working hard to change that, but it takes a period of time to bring in a pool of candidates. My question is that kind of the similar case for city managers?
yeah, it's not as like engineers and there's certain professions where it's extremely rare to have females as the public works director or city engineers. But city managers, it's, I just placed a couple of weeks ago an African-American deputy city manager in Rockville, Maryland. And she's a superstar. I mean, she'd be a great city manager anywhere, but it was a two-career decision, and so it just depends. It's almost a case-by-case process with, is family considerations and whether it's a spouse or parents or whatever. There's all kinds of other factors that come into play. But more and more, we're getting an increased number of female candidates and placements throughout the country. At least that's what we're experiencing.
Is Florida at a disadvantage because of our sunshine laws
I think it's hard to.
on this specific topic?
Yes. If you're trying to get people to apply that are content or happy in their current jobs, it's very difficult for them to apply, unless they're being forced out or unless they're looking for, they've been looking, or there's some compelling reason to move to Florida close to family or they're near retirement age for their first retirement. It's difficult because you don't want to take that risk and send the message to your community and your governing body, your bosses, that you're seeking other employment, even though it may have been the recruiter that convinced you to get their materials. And plus, we do such an extensive questioning of candidates that they are expected to respond to with substance, that sometimes it's when you put those things in writing, you can't pull them back, and if it's public, and so it just makes it difficult to get candidates sometimes from out of state. But I mean, it's also a great job. Clearwater's a great opportunity, very competitive salary, and you do have some very strong candidates.
Other questions or comments? Councilmember Beckman?
Do you think on our brochure, there's some language about the next city manager will, strive to develop a relationship with the Church of Scientology? Do you think that played a part in people applying?
No, I got questions about that, and I think it was exciting. I think city managers they like challenges like that. And, part of the skill set of being a really good manager is being able to communicate and establish relationships with a variety of stakeholders in a community. And so the questions I got, it was more of an exciting challenge that, it wasn't any kind of disparaging mark about the community. It was just,
Unique challenge.
You've got a downtown that with a number of stakeholders, a major property owner is one of them, and we need to really continue to improve relations with that major property owner. And I think most everybody took it as a real positive challenge, not as a negative.
Vice Mayor?
Two things. And Art, I do not hold you personally responsible, but I know you understand this, and you were involved to a degree. But I haven't totally forgiven Barry Burton, our county administrator, for stealing who I would be our next city manager. We wouldn't be going through this process if Barry hadn't have stole Jill Silverboard from us. And I think you know Jill, and we wouldn't be going through this process if that hadn't happened. So I haven't totally forgiven Barry for it, but Jill is outstanding and doing a great job at the county level. But the one other thing I want to put on the record is, I don't know if we're going to add Mr. Palmer or not, but his last paragraph in his answers to the question sum up so much of what we deal with in this. And it says, I want to say here, being at the top of the organization and in the political realm as a nonpartisan appointee can be a thankless and very polarizing position, particularly in local government in the era of social media. Cities are a regulatory agency as well, so that inherently can cause conflict. Great leaders are going to create controversy. Hopefully, conflict and controversy can be managed amicably and not in public. Politicians sometimes see the city manager as a politician and go on the attack publicly if they don't get their way or don't like something the city manager did. Unfortunately, I think that is becoming a trend in the U.S. Finally, sometimes bad people can get elected. Praise in public, punish in private. Praise in public, punish in private is something I have said every year we've done performance reviews on our city manager and city attorney. I say that every single year. And I think that paragraph sums up very succinctly kind of what the job entails for a city manager, what we all deal with, and I like what he said there.
No, I have it highlighted and very candid. I liked it too. And I'm a lover of the 1 minute manager, which is where that comes from.
Yep.
I still don't think he'd be a bad one to throw into the mix, but
I mean, if you want to add him as a fifth candidate, I would not object to that.
I'd like to, but I want everyone to feel comfortable with it.
I'm comfortable with that.
I liked him.
But
Councilmember Albritton?
Yeah, I'm fine.
Councilmember
Perfect.
Bunker, and then Beckman, it sounded like you had something else.
I just wanted to say that I too find it to be an exciting challenge dealing with the Church of Scientology. And I'm glad I'm here to help shepherd the new city council, or city manager into what dealing with Scientology is like. I have plenty of written policies from L. Ron Hubbard that might help.
Thank you, Councilmember Bunker. Councilmember Beckman, did you have something else?
Well, I just wanted to comment in case, our candidates are listening, but the comment that Vice Mayor Hamilton read, that last paragraph is great. And I believe it should be, a nonpartisan position, that we're building consensus and communicating openly. But I would, one of the questions as a heads up is I'll be asking about annual measurable goals for our city managers, what those look like, and how transparent we're going to be with how we create those annual measurable goals, how they're measured, and how we're reporting out to the public. So it is what it is. I mean, being personally critical can be for behind closed doors that way, but being transparent is super important. And I think, I would advocate for uniformity in evaluations as well, but that's part of later discussions.
Well, I don't think anyone up here disagrees with, being transparent and open to the public, so. So I'm hearing we have 5 then. Anything else you may need, Mr. Davis?
Nope, so let me, Cernich, Gufkin, Goldsmith, Palmer, and Woods.
Correct. So let's talk about next steps.
Okay. Well, what we would do is, I would personally call those with a phone call and thank them that didn't make the cut. But also, we would send out a release form to begin background checks with those 5 and make sure they reconfirm their interest and that they can be here on the agreed upon dates for the interviews. And we do the background checks, do reference checks, we do social media and Nexus background on them, as well as we would have them write a narrative answering a question about their career and what they're most proud of, and then we would put all of that information together for you and share it with you about a week prior to the interview so that you have plenty of time to review it all. And then we would have, I think it's on Monday, is it the 14th? Jennifer?
It is.
14th, Monday. We would have them come in, and my recollection is we do candidate tours, probably all together on that afternoon. And then Tuesday morning, the 15th, you all would have your one-on-one interviews rotating around. That afternoon, we'd have a kind of a department head leadership team meet and greet with the candidates for hour and a half. And then we'd ask them to give, a 3 or 4 minute presentation on their bio, and then split up into different sides of the room and let everybody just kind of mingle a little bit. And then that evening, would recommend having a community forum where you invite the public. And I think Jennifer has identified a rec center, is that right?
No,
Oh.
both the department head and the candidate community forum are going to take place at Ruth Eckerd.
That's right.
And the council one-on-ones are at the hotel at Opal Sands. Okay.
And then Wednesday morning, after the community forum, we would work with Jennifer and your staff to make sure we get the word out to the public and invitations out publicly, and have some mechanisms for them to get feedback to you all. And then whether that's email or postcards or however we do that, probably a variety. And then Wednesday morning, which would be the 16th, would be the collective interviews of the full council with each individual candidate on that morning. And I think we're trying to build some time in for deliberation following that meeting,
Right.
and maybe even a special meeting that Wednesday evening.
On the 16th.
That evening, early evening of the 16th or late afternoon. Don't know have we got an exact time yet? 6?
Yeah, so what we're going to do, so the panel interviews are not going to be televised, just so you know. That's to protect the integrity of the interviews, that way the other candidates can't watch it. But at the conclusion of those interviews, then we will be televised, and there's time for you all to have a discussion if you are ready to do so. If you are not ready to do so, then we have a special meeting scheduled at 6 p.m. that night. And then if you're still not ready to, we have a third backup available the next day on Thursday at the regular council meeting.
Yeah.
Okay. So any questions about that? Councilmember Beckman?
So there's no communication with candidates other than in public, correct? Between us and those candidates from now until the 14th, the week of the 14th?
Well, I mean, that's typically, yeah.
Okay.
It's the interaction between you all and the candidate, both in those scheduled one-on-one interviews and then also in the collective interviews. So, and then if there are some questions that you'd like me to ask all candidates, you can give those to me.
Give those to you? Okay.
And we will ask them to do that as part of the preparation before the interviews. And not, by the way, we will be preparing some suggested or draft interview questions to share with you that then you can tweak and decide among yourselves before the interviews start, if you want to add to them, cut any out, or exactly how you want to utilize those interview questions.
Well, that's one of the questions I had. If we were going to have some standard ones that we all agreed upon, that we wanted asked.
Well, I'm going to try to focus them based on what I know
Okay.
of Clearwater and the brochure we put together and some of those, the profile we developed. And then, once I get them to you all, then you guys can take them and if you need to have a special meeting to do that, or you want to just meet 30 minutes, before the first interviews, you could do that on the collective interview day. However you decide to do that.
You could probably have that discussion Monday at the work session. You can't vote, but you can talk about
Oh, that same week?
No, like next
Monday
Monday.
of
Next.
the 14th.
Well, Tuesday.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, the same.
Tuesday.
June 2nd.
Is it Tuesday?
Yeah, at Memorial
Yeah,
Day.
because it's Memorial Day.
So like we would come with some suggested questions that we'd like to have Art communicate to the 5 candidates
On the
on
14th?
Tuesday's work session?
Yeah, I don't think that would be a bad idea.
No, I don't either.
So that there are some specific questions that we all agree that we would like to get answered. I think it saves time.
Yeah.
We're okay with the wording.
But then we would prepare separate interview questions, suggestions for you
Yeah.
guys to use during the interviews, separate from that.
So think about that. I think that would
I
be
think that sounds good.
an efficient way to do it. Plus, it's nice to have certain things that I mean, that's been done here to an extent. They've been asked standardized questions that we've seen, the different answers that they gave, relatively speaking, but, you know, it's the process of having those private one-on-ones where you may ask somebody something that you wouldn't ask out here. I mean, let's admit, that's one of the reasons for some of the one-on-ones. I can only imagine, Councilmember Buckner. What one of the topics might be.
That topic might come up.
It may arise.
I'm going to have a fully fleshed list of questions that don't include Scientology, but it definitely will be touched upon.
So what else? Well, I'm happy. I mean, I thought this went efficiently, so thank you all. I know it took a lot of time to go through all the resumes. I think we do have an agreement that we're not going to be talking to any of the candidates prior to them coming to town. Is that very much like the RFP candidates for the bluff? I think that's understood, right?
How do you, I'm sorry. Go on. You okay? How do you feel about, so Mr. Cernich or whatever did reach out to community leaders, and I had one community leader email me or communicate with me a few weeks ago that just said, hey, one of your candidates reached out to me and he seemed nice, and she didn't name a name or anything. And then, yes, Mr. Hutkin texted me or whatever before last city council meeting, and I called him later, and he, talked up Mr. Cernich. But I don't particularly feel comfortable with candidates reaching out to people in the community and then having those residents, call me individually about that. There's just something that doesn't sit quite right. I think if we're gonna have the community forum and if Jennifer is gonna collect feedback from, maybe it should all go through Jennifer that way. I don't know, do you have feelings about that, Mr.
Yeah, I
Davis?
think there's a difference to me between someone that's doing their due diligence and really inquiring with some leaders that are, and not, but I would agree, there should not be any pressure or persuasion by a candidate in trying to influence the decision, the decision-making body. The really good candidates are going to do their due diligence and call people they know in a community, and to me, that's a good thing, because you want them to enter the relationship eyes wide open, and if they hear about issues or concerns or a lot of the positive attributes, the more knowledgeable they are coming into the interview, the better. But if there is the intent to put pressure on, the city commission or the city council, then that would be concerning. But did you sense there was pressure put on them to talk to you?
I don't know, I don't want to speak for, I just.
Okay.
I didn't, I got several calls, and basically they were all HOA, neighborhood association type leaders who had been called. And it was just to get perspective on the city
And they were just giving you a heads up?
and what the issues
Yeah.
were from their perspective.
Okay,
And
Yeah.
all they were telling me was, I got this phone call.
okay.
There wasn't any lobbying that this was good or bad. It was just, some of these
And
people
then-
just call and
then
inform you.
To me,
because
that
you
would
have
be a good thing.
relationships. So I took it as a positive.
Yeah.
I mean, I like people that go the extra mile to learn about whatever job they're interested in. To me, that shows initiative and passion. But that's just the way I took it. So I didn't take it as a negative.
he had
And he was
mentioned-
very appropriate when I did recognize him on the street.
He mentioned to me that he knew a lot of people from Clearwater just from being in Florida for so long, and you know, my impression is he has visited this community and Pinellas County quite a lot growing up, and so and he may even have some family here, and
Well,
so
he was bookended by two of our assistant city managers within Florida ICMA as president, right? So that's
Yeah,
one of
he's-
the big connections.
yeah, and
Ms.
so
Overboard and Mr.
you know,
Maxwell.
he just seemed really excited about the
That's-
opportunity to
And it's
meet.
not him, it was more the resident that then reached out. And
Oh,
I
okay.
just, I think I'm gonna direct the residents to, you know, I mean, they can always reach out to me. I mean, that's what I'm about, but it was just, you know, I just.
Well, I think,
I agree. I wouldn't want to be pressured like that.
Councilmember Bunker and then the vice mayor.
This is off that topic. I just wanted to say the thing that put Cernich over the top for me was the scandal that the city had where the council members essentially gave themselves huge bonuses and travel expenses and things like this, which I thought, oh, my, what? But there was one of the council was demanding that Cernich attack the newspaper for an editorial. And he said, no, I'm not going to do it because everything they wrote was true. And I appreciated that. Respecting the role of journalism and not going the fake news route was very important to me.
Vice mayor?
well, I think, back to the, you know, Mr. Cernich reaching out to people, and we all got phone calls from Sam, you know, and Sam was, you know, he was impressed with Mr. Cernich, but he has not heard from any of the others either. I think if the others, now that we've narrowed it to 5, I'd be surprised if the finalists don't do the same thing and start reaching out, now that they know they've made it to this level, and talk to some of these people. So I would suspect, you know, just because he was impressed with Mr. Cernich doesn't mean in the final wash, as we go through the process, Mr. Cernich would be his final best candidate. It's the only one he's talked to. It's the only one he's heard from. So I don't put I put no weight, I put nothing into the fact that he reached out to Sam, because there's a lot of water to go under the bridge before we stop the flow and make a decision, so.
All right, anything else? Anything else, Mr. Davis?
No.
Mr. Horn, Ms. Aiken? Ms. Poyer?
May I add 2 things?
Yes, ma'am.
Just quickly, remember when you're making your notes and stuff for the interviews, those are all public record. So just as you're doing that, so everything you write down when you are in those interviews are public record, and we will need to maintain them. So I wanted to make sure you were aware of that ahead of time. Secondly, please also be thinking about that, you know, we have those 3 meetings scheduled in case you aren't ready to make the decisions, but also at that time, we'll be needing to discuss the negotiations of the contract. So you have 2 big decisions that are going to need to be made during that same time frame. So I just wanted to make sure that you were contemplating that. You all have meetings scheduled with Mr. Davis after this, and so please feel free to use that time to talk about both the city attorney and if you have questions in regards to the contracts as well. Okay.
Thank you
That's
for
all.
all your hard work. Appreciate it. All of staff. And with that, we're adjourned.